Dana, your witness.
Oh, gosh, I read that column, too, and I thought it was kind of silly, just simply because I've been doing this since before February of last year, and all of my criticisms and everyone else that I've been around, everyone's criticisms have been about nothing but policy. And I think for Frank Rich to try to make this out to be people who oppose big government are racist is intellectually dishonest, and I think it's beyond silly. You know what? And I
what
really
do you make of the what do you make of the signage? Some of it's pretty nasty, and why don't people walk away from those signs? Why are they comfortable standing there when people have nasty signs up? Hitler mustaches, et cetera, et cetera.
Like they did with Bush Hitler? Because they had that on the left as well. I mean, I explicitly remember the RNC protest from the Republican National Convention that happened just a couple of years ago. There were Bush Hitler signs. I myself have been to protests in St. Louis where they've burned Bush in effigy. So, I mean, to kind of like portray it as just being on one side and not the other isn't exactly fair. Because, I mean, Google Bush Hitler. You'll get pages and pages of the same thing. But the bottom line is, too, is we know that with any large group of people, you are going to have people who are on the fringe on both sides. But the difference that I'm seeing is that a lot of people on the left like to sit here and portray that the fringe on the right represent the whole of the right. And that's not
Did you just see that sign? Don't blame me. I voted for an American. There is a big number of people out there, led by Neugebauer of Texas and other Congress people, who challenge this president's birthright. They challenge that he's an American. If you look at a poll I saw, it showed that they were largely bunched in the South, those people who believed that he wasn't an American. And you say that's not racial. Why would it be bunched in the South so heavily, these people that believe he's not an American? What's that about?
Well, do you mean the same way that the left tried to say that John McCain wasn't an American because he was born on a base in Panama?
Nobody
because you
made
can
an
say
issue of
that's
that.
racial too.
No, Dana, don't chuckle about this. It isn't funny, and nobody made an issue of John McCain being born in another country.
Well, if you're asking me whether or not I'm a birther,
made an issue of that.
No. Oh yeah, there was.
Why are there so many birthers out there? Why are there so many birthers out there?
I'm not a birther, so I'm not quite sure.
Why are they out there? Why are people comfortable having them in there?
Why are there so many people who deny 9/11 on the left? I mean, we can sit here and do this all day. But
well,
no, there was that issue that was made about
the truthers are part of the
McCain,
Obama coalition, do you think? Whereas the birthers are part of the Tea Party crowd.
Well, let's see.
Why are they comfortable in that group?
Was it who was it? Maybe not John Cusack or Sean Penn. There was a celebrity who is a truther. That's, talked about
that's
this.
odd.
But, I mean, why can't we talk about the substance of this? Why do we have to constantly try to invalidate people who are for smaller government by saying that they're racist? That is, I mean, I think it's actually an insult to the civil rights movement. And to say that people who oppose
Professor, you get in there. I have my own reasons. They're based upon all these birthers out there that I do think are challenging his Americanism.
This is about big government.
Well, let me just suggest this, that the Tea Partiers, by using the language of Tea Party, have asked us to draw a parallel between their movement and the Revolutionary War movement. But I think if we look more carefully, we will see that in many ways the Tea Party movement resembles more closely the kind of secessionist feelings that were both part of the Confederacy before the Civil War and then also remained in the post-Civil War Reconstruction era. So in other words, what we've been asked to do by the...
not secessionism. It's about 10th Amendment principles.
Well, except that secessionist language has been used quite clearly, both by GOP elected officials, and it's also been used by individuals in the Tea Party.
Being used, like with the health care legislation. I know that there's been 14 states that have filed suit against it because they're upholding their 10th Amendment right under the Constitution.
Yeah,
but I've never heard anything about secession.
Well, certainly.
You never heard Rick Perry of Texas say secession?
Yeah, we saw Governor Perry talk about that.
I've heard people misconstrue and misinterpret talking about 10th Amendment rights and state sovereignty, people who want to increase the size of federal government, that being intimidating, I think, and then them looking at something, they're trying to succeed from the nation. That's not what the Tea Party is about. The Tea Party is not about secessionists. It's about, then the original Tea Party was about taxation without representation. And in many instances, those parallels can be drawn because they're logical in this modern
the people here actually are voters. So I think we need to be very careful about that. That's precisely my point, that what the Tea Party's asked us to do is to see themselves as these kind of disfranchised colonists with this monarchy over them. But that's simply not what's going on here. We have a duly elected government with citizens who have a right to vote for this government.
Legislation.
Right. But this is a duly elected government where the citizens who are
people
angry,
by way of just existing in the United States.
These are certainly individuals with a right to be angry.
Dana,
but it is not a situation of the Revolutionary War. This is much closer to the Civil War.
This isn't working. Dana, your thoughts, just for a second, Dana. I want her to respond. It's your turn, Dana. I want you to say, is there a parallel between a colonial government in London that was not elected, George III wasn't elected, and an elected president who won with the majority of the American voters behind him, and the polls show he still enjoys a modest advantage in that department. But you say that he's not really legitimate. That's one of the arguments.
No, that's not what I said at all.
Well, when you start talking about secession and nullification,
I've never talked about secession, and I never said. I'm happy. I mean, he was elected by the people. The people voted. They elected Barack Obama. I don't think anybody of my acquaintance has contested that. But what I'm discussing is a piece of legislation that was passed by Congress, which, by the way, has an all-time low now, 1994 level, I think the latest Rasmussen poll this morning. What I'm talking about is a piece of legislation that was put forth by this Congress that has been opposed by the majority of Americans from every single poll. I can rattle them off all now if we need to be. That abuses the Commerce Clause, that abuses the power of the Constitution. That's what I'm talking about. That's what a lot of other
civil rights bills were opposed by a good segment of the United States, and so were the Voting Rights Act, opposed by a good segment of the United States. That doesn't make those people right.
Civil Rights Act. Let's not remember who set an 83-day. Let's not forget, rather, who set an 83-day record filibustering the Civil Rights Act. And I believe one of them is still a Democrat, Robert
Of course,
Byrd.
and the political parties have shifted places over the years. We certainly know that after the passage of the Civil Rights Act in the South, these are precisely the sort of blue dogs who ended up being Republicans. No one is doubting that. And also, by the way, no one doubts the rights of political minorities to voice their disagreement. I mean, that is absolutely an American
we have
right.
to go. Both here, thank you both for coming on. Melissa Harris, Lacewell Princeton. Thank you, Dana Loesch. Thank you very much for joining us. Up next.